So that would be like roughly, I think, $61 million, ball, back of the envelope kind of calculation. I think the operating expenses were about $344 million and change, and so that'd be about $61 million. And again, just to kind of highlight and put some things in perspective, if you look on page 34, I have a graph there that shows university support for intercollegiate athletics. And here it's important to note that this is the money that is coming out of student fees and out of the university's general fund. This is included in general, educational and general funding, meaning that these funds are available for pretty much any use in carrying out the mission of the institution. And here, they're spending pretty close to $12 million on intercollegiate athletics, and that's above and beyond any revenue that they're getting. So this is the actual, what this consists of is the subsidy that the university gives plus any losses that intercollegiate athletics has, because that money has to come from somewhere. I mean, when there's a loss and you've spent more and you need to write a check that's going to come from somewhere. And so you need to really count that. And again, just to give you kind of a little bit of a perspective here, if you took half of that, or even $5 million of that money, that's enough to give the faculty, the full-time faculty, an 8% increase in compensation. I think I did that. I did the math quickly here, but I think 5 over 61, somebody can check, it's approximately 8%. So again, this is not to say what any proposals should be. That's not my job. That's a job of your negotiating team. But I'm just trying to give you some sense of what might be possible here. If you look at the net income, which is really the operating income, the operating profit of the institution, you'll see the losses in 2008 and 2009, and those are, it's almost universal that you will see that. And this is what a lot of people were pointing to a couple of years ago, saying, oh my God, the world is coming to an end because we're seeing these losses. Most of these losses are due to declines in the value of investments. They're unrealized losses. They're losses on investments, unless you're stupid and you go out and sell low and buy high, which it's clear that the university has not done here. They're not real losses, and you can see that in 2010 there was a slight positive net income, and that in 2011 it really shot up, and it's, I don't know the exact number, but looking at my graph, it's getting close to $60 million. So that's a big turnaround. Again, this is the exact same pattern that you see in school after school, not just in Ohio, but across the country. And remember that included in that net income number is an expense that is big at all these schools, which is depreciation. So whenever you're saying that, well, how could a school in effect run a loss year after year after year, one of the and not that you have, but you could, because depreciation is a non-cash expense. It's something that shows up in your financial statements. It's a way of taking the cost of putting up buildings and expensing them over the lifetime of the asset, but you're not writing a check for it. And that's one of the reasons to look at the cash flows, which I'm going to get to. The one last thing to look at is, and I think a good graph to look at is on page 37, and you can look at the dollars in figure 22, which is the change in net assets, and you'll see exactly the same pattern there, only the dollars are a little bit different. What's the difference between the net income and the change in net assets? And the answer to that is that in the change in net assets, which is kind of your overall bottom line, that includes money that the state gives universities for capital. It includes capital appropriations. And that money is restricted to the use of capital. You can't really pay salaries with it. But one of the things you'll see is, of course, the bigger the state support for capital, or the bigger the donations that you get for capital, which also show up there but haven't really played a major role at your university, that of course frees up other monies that would ordinarily have to be spent to support that capital expenditure. So it's still important to be aware of this and to know that it's there, and that's what the change in net assets is showing you. It's your net income, but then it's also any additional revenues that you're getting for your capital appropriations. And you can see there that, you know, we're probably in a little over the $70 million range, meaning that that's a profit. And I know that a lot of people tend to think about universities as, well, you're a nonprofit organization, and what really, that's kind of a misnomer. What we really are tax exempt, not nonprofit. And the fact that universities make some profits actually is a good thing, because you do want to be able to add to your reserves. You want to be able to, if there's a temporary phenomenon, decline in enrollment, or a temporary cut in the state because of a downturn, you want to be able to have reserves that are there. The real issue is, how much of a reserve do you need, and when should you use some of your reserves to cushion things? A lot of people were saying in 8 and 9, well, we can't use any of our reserves because things are going down. Well, I mean, what we've shown is clearly that was wrong, because they're back up in 10 and 11. And so instead of having to make a lot of cuts, which end up hurting the quality of what institutions are doing, some of those kinds of cuts could have been absorbed by using some of the reserves and then building them back up when times are better.